Hello, this is National Chess Master Arats at chess.com, continuing my video series on the correspondence team match played between my video lessons group and the team CARPE DIEM. This was played on board 141. Our man is Tito, quadruple 0, playing against Sobs 11. Ratings is hard to say. I think mid 1600s on both. Sobs forfeited this game on time, and probably a lot of others. His rating went down to 1300 by the time this was over, and they were both mid 1600s when the other game that Tito won was completed. So anyway, we have a Sicilian defense, and Black opts to play one of the seldom seen lines. Now, I really don't like Black's next move here, Queen A5 check. Just develop a piece instead. And what White should do is bring this knight out, and anyway, sets up discovery threats, and Black counters and attacks the pawn. But I kind of think White's for choice here. I really do. And I don't much like this move, knight g4, trying to get a cheapo checkmate. Yeah, you can do this against kindergartners that just learned to play. Okay, we're adults. We don't fall for things like this. But you'd be surprised. I'm sure somebody will say, well, I did that. Yeah, I know you did. I've seen quite a few myself, actually. Too many to even begin to name. But both sides need to develop, and Black's going to have a hard time doing his, as we will see, or creates his own problems. Okay, knight d4 looks logical, attacks the queen, and now he decides just to bring the queen back, the knight back. Knight wasn't even under attack. I don't understand this. Like I say, Black just started making things difficult on himself. Maybe he now wants to go to b4 and attack the queen and win this pawn on c2. Again, these are things you do against kindergartners. Okay, you need to develop your pieces. Just bishop e7, get yourself castled. Okay. So anyway, knight went back to c6. Now White's for choice, and Black is pretty much losing right now. But White doesn't find the win. What's wrong with Black's game? Well, that bishop on e6 disappeared. It was defending the knight on g4. All Black has to do, or White has to do right now, is simply play queen b5 check, and White can throw in the towel. Because the rules say you have to get out of check, right? Well, let's get out of check this way. Okay, let's take the queen. Well, we're no longer attacking the knight on g4, but we are attacking the knight on c6, and it's a goner. You can bring it back if you want. Okay, you're losing a piece. Black's losing a piece here. That's all Black had to do, or White had to do, was check on b5. What can I say? Instead, he makes things difficult on himself. He's still for choice, and this check is very valuable, and it's because Black hasn't bothered to castle. Now White finds the correct move, attack the queen. Now the queen has to protect the knight, right? There's only one safe square that does that. And now we kick it out of there. And Black needs to cover the mate. But he chooses to do it this way. This is a mistake. G3 we'll keep White on top. You got to get the queen out of danger. Where are you going to put it? You put it on h6, you drop your knight directly. So queen g5. Well, now you give the check. And now Black gets to move his king. And you don't want to go to e7 and get checked on b7. So you have to go here. Now you attack the rook. Rook's in trouble. Let's put it here. And White's really got... I'm sure White has a winning game here. Let's see. Let's try bishop a6. Let's threaten that rook. What are you going to do, Black? Rook c5. Let's see. We could play queen takes f7. We could check on b8 when the king moves forward. Then we take on c7 or a7, right? Let's see here. King up here. Guess what? We get to block. But I'm going to check you again, and looks like you're in trouble. White's just having too much fun here. How many pawns did White pick up? Well, a whole bunch on the queen side, right? So He didn't win the piece like he could have, but this sure looks decisive. Now let me find out where in the position we left off. Okay, here's where he played Queen G3 instead of G3. Okay, so now the game's more or less even, and now White finds the check, but he finds it a little too late, and they're both kind of fumbling around a little bit here. Black steps into a pin, but White doesn't even try to exploit it, although Black has resources. I think, let's see, Rook E2, the attempt is to exploit this pin. Now, you'd like to block the file with Knight E5, but you can't because of this pin over here, right? So you need to stop probably and park your king here, and that way you can block the file with Knight E5 or bring the bishop over to F6 if it's menaced. But that's good for White, right? Black king can't castle. Okay, so anyway, he doesn't play Rook E2. He plays B4. Keep the knight out of C5, I suppose. And just a little bit more fumbling around. Now, why doesn't Black double up White's pawns? I mean, that makes sense to me, but he didn't. Okay, so now we're going into bishop opposite colors with rooks on the board, but that doesn't mean a draw. It means the attacking side's a piece ahead. Who's going to be the attacking side? Now, finally, on move 28, Black castles. But maybe it would have been better to play King D7. Have the king centralized for the ending. Maybe. Okay. So White tries to break the position open a little bit. And guards his pawn. White goes and attacks a different pawn. Black covers it. And here comes the queenside assault. So Black's queenside's a little messy. White's looks good. White's got a little bit of a space advantage. I think White's for choice here. And he plays G5 to secure his F-pawn so his bishop can move. Oh, look what's happening. There's an advanced pass pawn. And it's going to advance some more. Now Black's all tied down and has a really bad game. So Black tries to get some counterplay. He's got his own pass pawn that he wants to push, but White stops that. And White's got some pretty decent rooks going here. Now both sides start shuffling. Watch what Black does. Black pushes us off to the side, and White pushes off to the side, weakening F2. Is that critical? Well, it will be. And Black runs off to the side again. You'd think they would be playing in the center, but oh well. Here's the point of Black playing or White playing King H2. He wanted to get G3 in. I guess he could have done that anyway. But there's no need to advance the pawns, for White to advance his pawns over here. This just makes weaknesses. And we will see how this becomes critical here in a move or two. Here come the pawns. He pushes by. And it's at this point that, well, not yet. Now F2 is a problem, but White covers that. Now Black decides he wants to run his pawn, get that bishop out of there. And now he attacks the rook. So the rook, maybe his logic is the rook needs to guard this pawn, and if the rook stays on the rank, I got rid of that advanced pawn. Maybe it's not a bad idea, but then that's what White should do. But instead, White bungles things and plays rook b3, and now Black has some incredible counterplay going. White's kept his pass b pawn, but it's not going anywhere. So White says, oh look, I can get 3 connected pass pawns. But Black now has a winning position, and Black doesn't see it. Black to play and win. Pause the video. Okay, you've come back. F4 it creates serious problems for White. Let's burn a move. Let's just put the bishop on C6 for the fun of it. Well, look at this. Check. Okay, check. And isn't that checkmate? Sure looks like it to me. So that's what black is threatening. White's got to defend against that, right? Okay, let's try to find a defense. Okay, let's take the pawn. Well, guess what? Check. And better bring the king up here. Now comes this. And it looks like white has to lose a rook here. And he may even lose his king if he's not careful. Maybe this rook can come over here and get this check in. But I don't know. White can probably jettison a rook for that pawn. But black was suddenly winning this. And he missed it. He missed his chance. So both sides are being quite careless here. And after rook takes d6, black retreats his bishop. Wait, didn't play f4. He played the bishop back here. And now we see this sequence of moves. And here come the passed pawns. And it was at this point that white lost on time. It appears to have a completely winning position with those powerful passed pawns, but you got to log in every 3 days, or upgrade your membership to Diamond, so that if you don't log in, it'll automatically put you on vacation. Okay, let's switch to the other game. See how that one went. What move will it start it out from? Move 1, we hope. Nope. How's a pick move 14? I have no idea. All right. At least it looked at the beginning of this that both sides were using opening references. At least it looked like. And black finds knight a5, probably the most popular move. And we're following theory right now. Now, normal bishop e2. Bishop a4 is playable, but black should be okay with it. Black sacrificing a pawn for activity. But again, with all the resources available, how could black not play the best move? The best move is, and main line is h6, and that's and then after knight f3, you can play e4. And in some cases, if the knight goes back to h3, you can just chop it off and mess up the white pawn structure. So, if black had looked it up, he would have got a good game, but now the game kind of languishes in equality for a while. And look at this, a3. Oh my goodness. I can understand why he's doing it. He's not doing it to keep bishops and knights out of this square. He's trying to drive this knight away. But why do you want to drive? Let's ask a question here. Why do you want to drive this knight away? Why? Okay, what's it doing on the side of the board? It isn't doing anything. This is one of the reasons. Okay, let's just flick this back to this position. Okay, former World's Correspondence Champion Hans Berliner won a famous game back in the 1960s when he became, I think, the third World Correspondence Champion or thereabouts. He normally defended with the Alekhines defense against e4, but he found he was playing black against Yakov Estrin of the Soviet Union, and Estrin was considered the world's leading authority on the two knights defense, and as a matter of fact, had published a book on it. And Berliner got his book and found a new idea that he was able to try against Estrin, and he had to play a very strong game on top of his new idea, but he defeated him in one of the more famous games in correspondence chess history. You can find it, Estrin Berliner, Correspondence Chess World Championship. Google it. It's there. There's a lot of stuff even written today about that game. And I've always enjoyed going back and reading these things and playing over that game. But Berliner employs what they call the Fritz variation. When I said this knight a5 is the most common move, the Fritz variation is b5, and it's worth a look. It can really confuse a white player if he's not familiar with it. The first idea is if pawn takes, you take this bishop and you're rid of a lot of pressure against your king. Okay. The next idea is if white takes this pawn with his bishop, now the d pawn is unprotected and black can take it. So the opening itself is beyond the scope of what I can show in this video, but it requires some research. But I can just suffice it to say what Berliner said. He said he thought that b5 was the better move because it doesn't put the black knight on the side of the board. The black knight on c6 has more mobility, and under general chess principles, b5 is the correct move. You know what? I agree with him. b5 is the better move. So, with all that said, about opening theory, why does white want to drive this knight back into play? Let it come back on its own. All right? It's either going to sit there and do nothing, or it's going to come back and play on its own. Why spend 2 moves to drive it away when you could use 2 moves to develop your pieces? I think it's a fair question, and it's something you can learn from. And it's something I've always preached in all these games. When in doubt what to do, develop something. Because, look at this. These 4, the entire white queen side is, here, let me get rid of that. The entire white queen side is not out of the starting gate. He hasn't even moved a pawn. Okay? If white thinks he wants to castle queenside, which he probably doesn't, but if he's 5 moves away from doing it, white could castle right now. White could play d3 and take the sting out of this e4 push away. D3, and that gets a line open for the bishop. Then if h6, you can bring the knight back to f3 and not worry about this e4 push. Okay? Why does white want to push this? Because white doesn't understand opening theory. White doesn't understand the importance of development. And once again, black should be playing h6 and then e4, and he's probably got a fine and comfortable game. Instead, black plays passively, and now his knight goes back. And white develops his bishop. He's got his bishop out. Maybe he thinks he's done great here because he gained a tempo to bring this out. But, now black starts finding the correct moves. h6 now. And now e4. But there's some differences. The main difference being white now has knight d4. He doesn't have it in the other positions. So this knight on d4 is now nicely placed. It's not sitting somewhere else. Now, normally we might go to e5, but then this bishop isn't a target on that square, and black can gain further time on the knight. So, black's finding the right moves now, but he's found them in the wrong order. And the game stays, relatively even, maybe a slight advantage for white. Okay, a little checkmate threat. And now black's getting aggressive. Probably the smartest move is to play f3, but he doesn't play that. It just keeps more squares under control, like g4. Plays f4. Bothers the queen. The queen comes out. And one drawback with making this move is that it unprotects c6. And white can just give up the exchange and grab that. And then e3 will be soon to follow, and white's going to be down the exchange but have 3 pawns compensation for it. But he saves it. And now the c-pawn falls, and white's up a pawn. Actually, white's up 2 pawns, and this pawn on e3 is not as safe as it looks. And white starts building up a pretty strong advantage. And here, black makes a horrible blunder, and white doesn't see it, doesn't see what to do. Pause the video. White to play and win. What would you play? Well, there's probably more than one win here. The most obvious one is to play knight b5. This uncovers the mate threat on g7, and it attacks the black queen. What can black do? Well, he can guard the mate and lose his queen. That's what he can do. Okay? So instead of playing knight b5, white opts for rook takes e3. And, white's still better, and he's still going to win, but he could have won a little quicker. Okay? And a little more efficiently. He's 3 clear pawns ahead. He's got half his queenside developed. Still has 3 guys yet to move over there, but he's up several pawns. And now black gets some counter threat on the knight on d4. That wouldn't have happened if white had won the queen. And now suddenly black is back in the game. White's got these pawns, all these pawns over there on the queen side, but they're kind of immobilized. uh, these double pawns are going nowhere, and they're shutting in this bishop. So instead of white having a clear win, he's got to start working all over again. And black's got the queen side pretty much blockaded. White starts scrambling to get his pieces out. And, black's doing fine here. White could have been winning, but black's hanging on. And probably the smart thing to do is try to use this half-open file. Try to use this knight somehow. Let's see. Can't get to e4 or c4, but maybe, let's see, d6, get it to b4, apply more pressure on d4, blockade the other pawn, and black's surviving, but black slowly starts going downhill now, and looks like white's getting a little more comfortable on the queen side. Now he's got this centralizing queen move, which creates a pin. And now the white pieces are starting to spring to life, and black's retreating, and his blockade he had is disappearing. And now, because black has lost his blockade here, now it's only a matter of time before these pawns start advancing and becoming dangerous. And there goes one, and another key thing that opens up this very critical diagonal. And black had that diagonal shut down. We'll back it up here in just a moment. We'll verify that. And now black is putting himself into a little corner here, painting his king into a corner, and then throws the game away immediately with knight d6. He's trying to blockade, but white has a checkmate in one move, and there it is. Rook takes h6. Remember, that pawn is pinned. So even though he got checkmated, at least he restored a blockade. He did have the right idea, but the blockade, I believe, was there earlier. Let's go back to when he played bishop f3. See, he's got the blockade right here, right? That bishop, usually your bishop's not your best blockader, your knight is. But the point is, it's blockaded, and white can't necessarily counter that blockade. Let me give you an example. Let's try to do it. I want to try to do it without losing this b pawn. That's not easy. What I'm trying to do is get this knight to c3, take this bishop, and if black retakes with a rook, the blockade is staying. White can't use his bishop to drive black out of d5. He can only use a rook and a queen, and black can just reinforce. So, black had the position blockaded, and he let it go. So there were theoretically decent drawing chances in here for black. It's still a fight. White has to prove his win. Instead, black released his blockade, and this queen that was out of place suddenly got into the middle of the board. Why did it get in the middle of the board? Because black drove it there. See, attacked the rook, drove the rook up to e5. Attacked the queen, put the queen on that diagonal. And now this bishop that was doing a nice job of blockading and reasonably posted, some pressure on this long diagonal, suddenly is out of play over on g4 for a couple of threats that only a beginner would overlook. That is an on-pre piece. And suddenly here comes the white game, and the black blockade was lifted, and white gets a checkmate. Anyway, with better play, Saab's 11 could have won both games. I think it's fairly obvious. Clearly, he was winning the previous game, and he did get a satisfactory opening at the point when white played a3. Let's take one more look. Okay. See, I said bishop e7 isn't the best move, but black can still play e3 or h3. And the knight comes back, and then e4. Now, as I was saying, you don't have d4. You can come up here. And, maybe there's a problem here. What about queen d4 now? I mean, this bishop is loose. What stops this in the other lines? Well, I don't know. Let's take a quick look at that. I know bishop a4 is a book line, but Let's try this here. If the knight comes back, now e4. Now, looks like you can't play this because of queen d4. So, you know, a lot of times white plays f4 here. Where's this knight go? Back to g1? Or do you have to accept putting the knight on h3 and allowing black to rip these pawns? You see, this is what looking up and learning opening theory will do. And correspondence chess is a perfect way to learn opening theory because you can sit and play over the lines and see what you like and you don't like. I know this is a line similar to something. It could be the main line, could be forced, but you know, gosh, it looks like black is doing well here. Let's tempo the rook. Okay, white has to stop and deal with that. Well, you could castle, I suppose, and maybe this is theory. I couldn't answer, but you know, play these openings in correspondence chess. You'll learn a lot about them because you're looking up the openings. You'll see all the lines. Then you go out and practice it in real chess, and you'll be surprised what kind of good games you can get. Anyway, good games to some degree for Tito quadruple zero, but definitely some room for improvement against a higher rated player. I think you would have been outmatched in these positions. Anyway, good luck to all, and be back again as soon as I can with the next video.